Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel where we will be talking about all things social mobility, particularly from a sociological perspective that enables us to talk about a diverse range of subjects, looking at social mobility from end to end, and not really leaving anything out, tackling a lot of controversial, difficult topics, topics that really need to be surfaced and addressed. But like I said in my first video, very much the start of any kind of social mobility journey, or indeed the start of any kind of transformation, whether it is some kind of physical transformation, whether you're going through, you want to change the way that your body looks, or you want to go through some sort of organizational transformation, you're going through a digital transformation, or indeed a personal transformation. What you are looking to do is to understand your current scenario or your as is state and transition to something better, something that is in the future, something that might be to be determined, right? Which is absolutely fine. But you ultimately know that you want to achieve something better. And achieving that something better doesn't necessarily need to be financial, doesn't necessarily need to have economic or commercial or anything monetary tied to it. It's very much a personal journey. And why do I like talking about these things? I like talking about these things because I've been on that journey, and I've been on that journey for about the best part of 30 years, where I totally turned around my life, going from very much a street life into the corporate world, and now being in a position where we're trying to put something constructive back and trying to encourage people from all different parts of society to think positive, to really take themselves forward. And, if there's anybody out there that, might be listening to this and thinking, right, all right, well, you know what, things are a bit rubbish for me, not very good. I can't see myself moving from my as is to the new states. I can't figure it out. Don't know what it means, what it involves. This channel's for you, right? This channel is all about giving you some sort of framework, some sort of guidance, an ability to maybe even reach out to me for mentorship, to talk about, and just generally encouragement from the wider community as well, to do something better for you, for your families, for society. It becomes very much what you might call a virtuous cycle, right? And as I said in my first video, the starting point for any one of these journeys and this transformation is very much about mindset and making sure that you approach this task with a ruthlessness and very much, uh, um, a resilience. And very much, I think in the first video, we described it as a gangster kind of mindset rather than a hood mindset. A hood mindset, as I said in that first video, will just keep you locked into your current state and in whatever that might be. If you and you might be happy with that current state, and if you're happy with that current state, then you're not on that personal transformation journey or a social mobility journey, if you want to call it that. You're happy where you're at. Carry on, right? Keep doing what you're doing, and good luck to you. But if you are somebody that genuinely is not satisfied and not stimulated and knows that there is something more meaningful, something missing, and you can just feel it somewhere in your gut, right? That, you know what, this isn't it. This isn't me. This isn't, I'm not going to let this set of circumstances that I find myself in today define who I am, define my individual story. So if that's you and if that's how you're thinking, then really what you need to do is to put up some serious scaffolding for your mindset and really think about ways that you can blot out the negativity. Because certainly when I started, I was very much growing up in an economically deprived area, very much what you might call an inner city ghetto type area. Everyone's skin career options were, do you want to join the army or do you want to be a criminal? That was about it, right? So I think if you find yourself in that kind of scenario, you will also know that in and around your proximity, there's just negativity, right? And there are what you might call haters or people that don't want to do anything themselves, but don't want you to do anything either, right? So they will look to discourage you from doing anything different, any effort to better yourself. They would see the negativity in it, or they would look to remind you about some of their perception on your limitations, right? Or why you might not be successful, or why it's too difficult, or why you know, you shouldn't aspire to whatever it is that you're aspiring to. And what you really need to do is to, particularly if you were like me, where I suppose deep down at heart, growing up as a kid, I think I was mega hypersensitive type person. But I think that the way that society and just general life experiences condition me, you start masquerading as a hard-hearted kind of person. And yeah, you've got this big broad shoulders and you know what, you know the score, you're streetwise, right? And you are going to hold your cards close to your chest. And it's not about letting other people know your vulnerabilities. And I get that, right? And that's fine, right? And you can have that public face, for the want of a better description. But when you're by yourself and you're just having a word with yourself and you are sitting down and you're just thinking about, all right, you know what? I'm not so sure. I don't know. Can I do this? There's no one around me that's done it. And you know what? I'm in such a diabolical situation, or everything looks stacked against me right now. How can I even plan my escape from this scenario? And it literally is that kind of mindset that you would need to kind of leverage and employ to make sure that you can take yourself forward. And, if you were anything like me, you would go through periods of, yeah, things look rosy today, and you might have an incident. I don't know. You might have an altercation on the street. You might get stopped by the police. You might be in a situation where you haven't got the money to do something, or whatever the scenario is that you find yourself in. Sometimes you feel as though you're going like 3 steps back, right? And then you get into this kind of dark frame of mind where you might think, yeah, you know what, actually, um, you know what, yeah, I'll keep doing what I'm doing. I'm gonna keep smoking the weed, or I'm gonna keep, doing what I'm doing, womanizing. I'm gonna keep doing whatever, fraud, or not being nice to people, or just being, a negative human being, right, in every sense of the word, right? Because you've got this dark downward pressure all over you all of a sudden, and sometimes it's difficult to kind of break out of that. And what I wanted to share really is that you need a strategy, you need a plan to overcome dark moods that you will find yourself in, because when you're in those dark moods and your whole frame of mind changes from wanting to achieve something virtuous and good and positive and light and progressive and all of those positive kind of vibes, right? But once you are impacted by the darkness and you will then start to feel suffocated, and you will start to feel like you want to vent your anger or your insecurities, for the want of a better description, either to the nearest people to you, typically, whether that's your parents, whether that's your partner, whether that is your housemate, whatever, your Jill, cellmate, padmate, whatever situation you find yourself in, right? And what I wanted to kind of get across is you need to come with some daily tactics, and breaking it down to that daily level to create that positivity is what we're going to try and explore a little bit now. So let's get into that a little bit. So certainly for me, I was somebody that I had to take it a day at a time, right? For whatever kind of challenge I've always had to overcome, whether it is some sort of addiction to food, addiction to nicotine, addiction to whatever, right? I've had to overcome them by taking it literally a day at a time, right? You know what? I'm gonna go from 9 till 11 o'clock not doing X, not looking at this, not thinking about that, not being in a position where I'm going to speak to this person or do anything negative, and literally breaking it down to those micro increments of daily life, right? Because literally when I started out, that's where my mind was, right? 1 minute when you're on the up and you're feeling positive and you've got your natural energy and you're feeling good and what you're capable of, and deep down inside of you that you really want to achieve something much better, and you're not really satisfied with where you're at. Yeah, you might kid yourself. You might say, yeah, I'm this and I'm that, and I'm happy, and and you put on that bravado, right? And you're pumping iron at the gym, or you're doing this, or you're checking 2, 3 girls, or whatever it is that's making you fool yourself, right? That makes you think momentarily that you're in the right state. But deep down, you know that you're not. That's why you have those thoughts. That's why you're like, actually, I need to do something. There's something inside of me that I can't quite explain. And you know what? I actually want to stop doing X, Y, Z, whatever X, Y, Z might be, right? Or I want to make sure that I try and do a bit more ABC, whatever ABC might be, right? ABC might be, listen, you know what? I want to just start being a decent human being, right? I want to just start being somebody that is pleasant to be around. I want to just start being somebody that my parents respect, or somebody that the immediate people in my life don't view me as a failure, right? Whatever it might be, your own personal story, your own personal situation. Everybody's in a different situation, and certainly the point of this channel is not for me to kind of glorify anything that I've ever done in the past, or to be in a position where I'm going to surface loads of crazy stories and stuff like that, because I just want to move away from that. And not that I feel embarrassed talking about it. It's just, if I don't need to really share it, then I don't need to. But sometimes, yeah, it is, the right thing to do. And sometimes if you're speaking to an individual that's finding themselves in a similar position, you can share in that way. But I don't want to kind of put any glorification or kind of put it forward as something that's cool or anything that that I'm particularly proud of. It was a state that I was in, right, and a whole host of sociological factors contributed towards me being in that state, as well as me through my own stupidity compounding the situation. But anyway, getting back to creating the daily kind of positivity for yourself and that daily resilience to make sure that you are creating the right mindset so that you can begin to identify what it is that you want to do. Because, you know, if you want to transition from one state to another, you really do need to understand where you're at, who are you, what are you about, how do you want the world to see you, what legacy do you want to leave, for the want of a better description, right? And once you start thinking in that way, you can start then defining a to be state, a state of affairs that you can try and visualize yourself being in, right? Whether that is, having a job, whether that is not being an alcoholic, whether that is not being a drug addict, whether that is not being by yourself, whatever the situation is. And everybody's journey is personal and very, very subjective to themselves, right? But what I found is I needed to really break things down on that daily basis and take one day at a time. One day of not smoking weed, one day of not doing anything illegal, one day of not being around criminals, one day of etc., 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 etc. And really creating that kind of breathing space for my own mind, right? So, and for me as a human to actually grow and to be able to look beyond the immediate kind of uh, um, a few feet in front of me, and really be able to see a little bit more of what's on the horizon, right? And being able to then be in a position where I can, you know, expose myself to different types of people, right? So that you can learn something from them, you can gain some sort of insight into different lifestyles, different modes of living, right? Because certainly for me, I was living definitely a broken down lifestyle, right? There was just nothing normal about anything that was happening in my life, right? And normality, was something that was aspirational. And it's one of those things that for me, the aspirational side of it was, uh, I suppose, a missold kind of vision, insofar as I was just looking to mainstream society. I was just looking at kind of back in them days, the late 80s, 1990s kind of period of the last century, right? Where, you're seeing a lot of aspirational stuff on TV, or you're hearing things, right, from different people. And it's all, you know, very much kind of centered around money and that kind of monetary success, right? And you start thinking that actually that's what it should be, right? And actually, and this is what I mean about breaking out of the hood mindset, right? Because in that hood mindset, you know, pushing a nice car, wearing whatever clothes you're wearing, being in a position where you've got 5, 6 girlfriends in the area, or you're doing whatever, or your reputation is this, or you're doing whatever on a night, and you're living a certain lifestyle, and you start believing that elements of that transition into this new state, and those are things that you can take with you, right? And maybe, maybe you do take those things along with you, and you kind of, if you imagine it as a backpack of kind of experiences and emotions and, just stuff that's happened to you, right? Yeah, you're gonna be able to drop a few things here and there, right? But ultimately, the backpack still feels full, and certainly for me, felt full for a long time. Insofar as I didn't have my own vision. I didn't have my own vision because I was not really being true to myself. I wasn't really giving myself time to think for me, right? To be able to stop and have that positive kind of space to breathe where you can plan your next move, right? And literally, when you're having to make knee-jerk reaction after knee-jerk reaction to try and pivot into better scenarios, you can't really execute a meaningful strategy, right? It's very reactionary. And you have to employ sometimes a lot of crazy tactics that, upon reflection, you'd think, why the hell did I do it like that? Which again is another reason why on this channel we want to try and share better ways of doing things and make sure that people don't fall into the same kind of trap or experiences or downward spirals that I kind of found myself in. And I think an extension to the kind of positive mindset that you need to create is also to be in a position where you are seriously asking yourself the proper deep questions. I'm not on about surface nonsense, about what, I want to drive this car, or I want to have this salary, or I want to do what. I'm not on about shallow stuff like that. I'm on about the real deal, right? The purpose of life. Who are you? What is it that you're doing, right? And you know, can you genuinely look yourself in the eye and be proud of who you are, what you've achieved, what you've contributed? What is the footprint that you're going to leave behind? Because here's the thing, regardless of whatever you believe in, right? Here's the one guarantee that we've all got: we're all going to taste death, right? So you need to think in that deep way to be able to break out of the overall matrix black that we talked about in a previous video. And I'll try and link that video either in the description or somewhere just above me. And to to do that, you've got to be able to see things differently. You've got to be able to see your true self and be able to acknowledge the fact that you are somebody that is going to get to a better state, right? And that desire inside you is going to fuel you to start thinking about things differently, because nothing, I'm a firm believer, that nothing happens by accident. I'm very much a spiritual person. I like to believe in God. I'm a practicing Muslim. All of those things that I'm not embarrassed about. Absolutely. There was a period in my life where I might have hidden that, or I might have thought, what, is it even true? Do you know what I mean? Like, of course, you question yourself, you question the existence, you look at it at that very much surface level, a bit like an iceberg. What's showing above the water is actually not the real story, right? The vast majority of it and the depth of feeling and understanding is not even on display, right? You're not even aware of it at that point, right? And sometimes you get intimidated and you think, well, actually, do I really want to do that? What will What will Roger think? What will John think? What will Mohammed think? What will Tony think? What will Marlon think? Or whoever is in your circle, right? And at the end of the day, the thing is you've got to really start with that, right? Even you don't need the answers. You just need to start thinking in that way so that you can have some sort of connection to the celestial realm, because that is the reality of life, right? Whether you believe it or not, that is how it is. There's nothing that's happening in life, whether it's your life, my life, the next guy's life, the next woman's life, whoever, right? None of that is happening by accident. Everything is by design. And if you are an intelligent person, you can explore that and very quickly realize that yourself if you are open to going on that journey, right? If you're too intimidated or you're just like, nah, you know what, I'm gonna kid myself, which I did for a long time. I'm happy with this, like whatever this might be, right? And 9 times out of 10 for me, this turned out to be a load of nonsense, just absolute waste of time, right? Absolute waste of effort, absolute waste of money. And you just, to achieve those, upon reflection, shallow goals, nothing achievements, right? That the trail of devastation you're left in your wake to get there sometimes just leaves you totally embarrassed, right? And totally like where you think, what the, what was I thinking? Literally, what was I thinking, right? Um, so again, to try and help other people to avoid that, that would be my advice, is to explore that. You're not gonna, it isn't like, yeah, you know what, think that, and tomorrow you're gonna be doing this and you're gonna be doing that, and you know what, you're in a better state. No, it's a journey, and it's a painful journey, right? And you need to have balls to go on it as well, right? Because there's going to be something inside you, those doubtful moments, those influences within you that will say, nah, it's not worth the effort. No, you can't do it, so on and so forth, as well as the external negatives that might be saying that to you, whoever's in your peer group at that particular moment in time that can't handle their own insecurities, right, will try and make themselves feel better by trying to keep you within their proximity, right? Because they're not got what it takes at that moment in time to take themselves forward, right? They might generally, by and large, but it's not their time, right? And they feel intimidated by the fact that you're ready to move on, right? You're ready to get off at the next platform, right? And they don't want you to. So you've got to find ways of dealing with all of that and having that mindset where you're actually talking to yourself and saying to yourself, what is it that why am I here? Right, literally, what is the purpose of my life? And start to be open to exploring that. The other side, so there's very much a spiritual side to this transformational kind of experience, transformational journey that's involved in social mobility. There's also a physical element to it as well. And, from a physical side of things, you'll go through periods, particularly if you are being impacted by the negative outcomes, the negative people, the negative scenarios, just all of the downward pressure that you might be feeling at this particular moment in time, where you feel like, I'm at rock bottom here. You know what, it couldn't get any worse. And I've had moments like that where you're like, literally, how the hell did I end up here? Right. And in those moments, not only do you need that spiritual strength, but you also need that physical strength. And as a kid, I was always just the weakling, right? I was never really into sport. I was never really into anything. I was the scruffiest kid at school, probably the uncoolest kid at school, blah, blah, blah. Anything that you could think, that would make you an easy victim for, all of the sometimes childish horribleness that goes on. That was the state that I was in. And obviously, as life kind of unfolds, you start to change. And one of the things that I started to change is to get into physical activity, training, being in a position where you want to keep yourself strong, right? Because physical strength will give you the foundation of that mental strength that you need, right? And being in a position where you can create some level of discipline, whether you are saying, what, I'm just gonna do a few press ups, or what, I'm just gonna go for a walk, or I'm going to the gym, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that, is better than, you know, doing whatever, smoking weed, going to nightclubs, doing this, doing that, doing drugs, being in a position where you're just consuming terrible things, whether they are non-nutritional food right through to whatever level of intoxicant, right? And sometimes upon reflection, I'm like, wow, I can't even believe I'm still functioning. Some of the things that I have kind of consumed over the years. But yeah, you need that physical strength. You need to try and create some sort of routine. And again, very much like that spiritual kind of base, it isn't going to happen overnight. You might be smoking, you might be drinking, you might be eating nonsense, you might be doing a whole host of things that don't equate to, a healthy lifestyle or a healthy mindset. And what you've got to do is slowly but surely try and change those things. And again, you need to take it on a daily kind of basis and, start simple, right? And be in a position where you're reminding yourself regularly, listen, you know what? I might have eaten a load of crap today, but listen, you know what? The last 2, 3 days I've been on it. I've gone for a walk every day. I've done this, I've done that, I've been in the gym, I've been pumping some iron, I've been whatever it is, right? You need to remind yourself, actually, this is a journey and I'm mentally logging the progress that I'm making, right? Because being physical and being in a position where you are being disciplined is progress. Because you might find yourself in a state where there is no discipline, and actually, that was something that you aspired to, and you just wanted to be, totally out of control, for the want of a better description, and live in a hedonistic kind of lifestyle, right? And it's easy to fall into those ways, right? So, absolutely thinking about what is your purpose, from a spiritual perspective, being a lot more active in terms of physical activities, making sure that you're giving your body the opportunity to strengthen and to be in a position where it needs movement, right? Movement is medicine. And that will lay the foundation for you. And then there's also an economic element to this. And sometimes the economic element in a social mobility kind of transformation is the hardest part. It really can be a killer, for the want of a better description, particularly if you're in a broken down inner city ghetto underclass type situation, right? Where, and the one key metric of success is money, right? And it's easy to get wrapped up in that, and it's easy to think that that is the be all and end all, and I'm gonna have this, and you know what? If I stop being this kind of person, I'll be a regular Joe, and I get a job, then the job's gonna pay me X, and to get to those levels of achievement takes time, and it means that you need to uh, plan the economics of it, because the economic impact on this journey, if you're not prepared for it, can have really deep psychological and leave deep psychological scars upon you, right? Particularly if you go from a situation of not having any money and then all of a sudden you've got a load of money and you're like, what the hell do I do with it? Actually, I'm just going to lose my mind and do every single thing that I desire. Okay, some people might say, actually, that sounds good. Yeah, maybe, right, for a moment. But, at the end of the day, the thing is once you come to your senses, you will realize that actually, you know what, I should have planned that better. And, I could have been in a position where I could have leveraged that money in a much better way. I could have done something creative. I could have done something much more positive with that situation. And I think these are the things that you need to start planning out for this transformation. Because if you don't start thinking in this way, yeah, you might get lucky and you might, kind of fumble your way through it, amble through it. For me, coming through it was very much like being dragged through a thorn bush. It was a painful affair, right? Because I had no one to talk to about this. I had no one I could trust to share. And because you'd been conditioned to basically keep yourself to yourself and don't share any of your kind of insecurities or your concerns or, how am I going to deal with this? Or actually reaching out for help was considered to be a weakness. Thankfully, times have moved on, right? And that is no longer the case, and very much that hopefully that is one of the positive outcomes of this channel, is to say that there is, people you can talk to, and there are things that you can do, right, to make sure that it's not as traumatic as, say, my journey or somebody else's journey, right? I'm not saying I've had the most traumatic journey and look at me and I a brilliant survivor or anything like that. I know some people that didn't even make it through, right? Done, dead, right? Or lifed up, or, broken down situations, disabled, whatever happened has happened to some people. And it's, sometimes when you think about things, it just makes you more grateful. And it just makes you think, wow, well, out of all of the people that could have made it through, what was it about me that made me get through that situation? That when I look at those people that had a more negative uh, outcome, a negative ending, a negative kind of scenario, they seemed on the face of it set up for success. You would never think things like that would happen to those types of people that it happened to. Um, So I suppose getting back, and very much this video is all unscripted. That's going to be the vibe of this channel. We just get on, we just talk. We're going to, speak to some interesting people across the way. And throughout this journey, we're going to touch on some deep issues. But, right now, there's so much changing in the world. There's so many things. Going on in society that are absolutely crazy. It makes you feel like the whole world is going backwards sometimes. and the point of this channel is to put something positive back out there to say, actually, what created me. Whether you want to admit that to yourself right now or not. And, unless you're an elite person, you're not really in control of how things play out, right? And you can only take control when you free yourself and you free your mindset and you're in a different position. And there's lots of inequality going on in the world right now. Terrible distribution of wealth, particularly here in the UK, right, where the privileged few are living it large, right? And masses of society, lots of different stratas of society are really struggling. And again, that is one of the points of this channel, is to promote the transition from that state to a much better state. So I hope you come along for the ride. I hope you find this interesting. I hope you find this useful. Ping me in the comments anything that you'd like to talk about and anything that you'd like me to expand upon. And yeah, it's been interesting kind of sharing this initial part of the social mobility journey with you. We're going to tackle social mobility from a completely different angle that other people tackle it from. So I hope you enjoy it, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks for listening.